All right, I'm going to show you one of the best ways to start a Harley-Davidson board track racer. Now, board track racers didn't have a transmission, they didn't have a clutch, they didn't have brakes. They were only made to do one thing, and that's go. They eliminated the clutch and the transmission because when board track racing started, the motorcycles were pedal start. They didn't have a gearbox, and even through the 1930, when motorcycles did have gearboxes, they still ran them without a gearbox because the gearbox robs horsepower off the crank, and horsepower was highly valued in racing as it still is today. There's no way to start the motorcycle except to push start it. Use gravity to start it, meaning using the banking of the racetrack. Or by what I call rip starting it. And it's literally ripping the back wheel with my hand and starting the motorcycle through the direct drive of the rear chain and the primary chain to the engine. It's going to look easy when I do it, but it's not easy. It's very physical. It's almost 30 degrees here. It's going to snow any minute. But I had to strip down because this is such a physical thing that a bunch of clothes get in the way. Let me walk you through the sequence of this, and this isn't different than starting a flathead, knucklehead, panhead, shovelhead, Evo, kickstart, chopper. It's very similar. The difference is you don't have a kickstarter, so you have to use the rear wheel to do it. Once I know I have fuel and oil in the engine, I need to drain the crankcase oil out of the engine because too much oil in this engine will make it very hard to start, make it run hot, and make it run rough. This is the crankcase drain on this 1934 Harley-Davidson CAC. Earlier motorcycles just would have a bolt at the bottom of the crankcase. You remove the bolt or the screw and let the oil drip out. But this motorcycle has a convenient spring-loaded crankcase drain like a Harley-Davidson RL or VL flathead would have. And it's really nice because you just depress the drain. And the oil will drain out of the crankcase. People are going to tell you want 1 to 5 ounces of oil in the bottom end. With racing, I found out you want very little oil in the bottom end. All the oil that's in the bottom end right now is all over the flywheels and the rods and the crank pins. So when I fire the engine, it's going to sling residual oil. So you want to get most of it out of there because when you run the engine at this high RPM that we'll run it for racing, it's going to take on so much oil during the heat that when you're done racing the heat, the engine's going to be completely full of oil and it'll be running rough by that point. I'm going to prime pump the engine's flywheels with the primer pump in the oil tank. Okay, I'm going to close the choke on the Linkert carburetor. And I'm going to open the throttle all the way. Okay, remove my glove. I want to show you, this is a cold engine. I can grab the exhaust pipe with my bare hand. I can grab the cylinders. I can grab the exhaust valve, which would be very hot if I run it. So I want to show you how easy it is to start this if it's tuned right. But this engine is cold and has not been started. And now this is just like giving your panhead, knucklehead, flathead, shovelhead a prime kick with the key off. I've got the throttle open wide. I've got the timing retarded. The choke on the Linkert is closed. And I'm just going to give it a couple pulls on the rear tire slow just to get some gasoline moving into the engine. Then I'm going to flip the choke back 2 clicks. Not all the way, that's all the way, but 2 clicks back. So the idle needle is still unseated. Okay, now I got the engine primed with gasoline. I'm ready to do my pull start. And I want to show you my technique and pay attention. I'll walk through it with you real slow, but you got to pay attention to this because it's really important that you do it the right way. And this thing should start right up. This engine has so much compression that when I rip on the tire, it's going to lift the bike right off the stand. So I have a method I use, and it's kind of a scissoring method like this that I do with my shoulders. But I'm going to push down on the rear fender and pull up on the rear tire at the same time. And it's critical that as hard as I pull up on the tire, I push down that hard or even harder on the rear fender. Otherwise, it'll lift the bike right off the stand. And let me show you what will happen. Watch this. I hit that compression stroke. Watch. The bike comes right up off the stand. And what will happen is if it jumps off and starts running, it'll kick to the stand to the side and try and run away from you. That's why I have it in the front stand, but watch that again as I show you. I'm able to lift that motorcycle really easy. Okay, so watch how I center my chest over the rear fender and the rear tires. It's just like wrestling or grappling. You got to center your weight over the rear tire if you don't want it coming up on you. So that's what I'm doing is I'm putting my center of my chest right over this rear tire and pushing down at the same time that I rip this tire. It's cold. See if I can start this cold motorcycle in this cold weather with one rip. Same with any board track motorcycle or speedway motorcycle. It doesn't have a clutch or gearbox or any means to start it other than through the rear wheel. Rip starting is the way. If a bike won't rip start, if a bike won't rip start easy, there's something wrong with it. It's the same for Harley Davidson, Indian, Flying Merkel, Excelsior, Pope, Thor, you name the brand. It's always going to be the same way to do it. A V-twin is easier to start than a single cylinder. This was originally an alcohol machine. It would have been 14.5 to 1 compression ratio. I'm running it on pump gasoline just because it's easier on the motorcycle in a lot of ways. So I have it at about 9.0 to 1 compression right now, which is still a lot of compression. Most board track motorcycles are 5, 6, maybe 7 to 1 compression, not very high at all. But a V-twin is a lot easier to start because one cylinder is helping you fire the other cylinder once you get the wheel rolling. So actually a single cylinder is harder to start, especially this one because I have it at 9 to 1 compression, so it's quite a bit of compression. And if I don't press on that rear fender, it'll rip this bike right off the stand. Even with a person sitting on the seat, when I rip it hard, if I'm not pushing on the fender, it'll lift the person's weight right off the ground. It's pretty amazing to see. The motorcycle only weighs 168 pounds, which is very light, and probably making 35 to 40 horsepower on pump gasoline. So very, very powerful machine for its weight. Fun to ride. This is a champion. I've won on it. It's fun to start it. It's fun to hear it run. And it's fun to show you how I do it. Thank you for supporting my channel. Happy New Year 2025 to all of you. I hope you have a great year.